Beloved, good morning and welcome back to the shop. It is a chilly 26 degrees and I have something very exciting to share with you. We have a brand new tool, a tool that is going to allow me to do something I've never done before that I didn't know existed. But before we get started, let's get our fire going. Good morning, Mama. Are you cold? You want a fire? Has it been cold in here? Yeah, it's still got a little heat in there. Okay. The firewood's holding up pretty good. What are we, mid-March or so? We've put up 6 cords this year, and we're not going to get anywhere near through that, so we should be looking good. We might even have a cord left over. And of course, Proho likes the top-down method. I hate to keep repeating myself, but we have new folks that join us, and I always get the question, why are you building your fire backwards? Why don't you put the kindling on the bottom? No, this is the way right here. You put the big stuff on the bottom, and you put the medium stuff in the middle, then you put your kindling on the top. That way, you can light it and forget it, and it will burn for hours. You don't have to come back. You're missing some fur there. Have you been outside scrapping? Have you been scrapping with something? Goodness, Mama, you're out of food and water, aren't you? Nobody likes to have cat food in their water, I think. All right, gentlemen, are you ready to be amazed? Well, Proho is easily amazed. It's the little things in life. This is a blind bearing puller. Behold, it's always a wonderful occasion when you find an excuse or a reason to buy a new tool. This is for, well, actually, how do I explain it? It might be easier just to show you. I don't know about you guys, but I learned by seeing it done. You see, Proho was subject to a rotten public school education, so I don't learn so well. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but if I see something done, I can typically copy it. Here's a perfect opportunity to explain to you why I think Snap-on tools are worth the money. Little things like this. So this is just a standard thick-walled socket like you get, they're not all the same, but it won't fit in this difficult spot. So if you were to be paid to do work and you bought cheap sockets, you might find yourself in a situation like that. Of course there's workarounds, but thin-walled sockets and tools designed to fit in difficult locations from years of experience of mechanics, it's oftentimes the things you don't see. If you just look at the price, you don't see these little details that make the difference when you're really in a bind or you need to work for production. Here's a pro tip I'll share with you when you have to remember bolt locations. Get a piece of cardboard and punch holes in it to match the bolt pattern of whatever it is that you're taking off. Now, this is important because bolt lengths are different on some things, and if you were to put a bolt that's too long in, you can run that in there and you can crack an engine case. Let's pull this stator off of the cover and then we can get to, I can explain to you the problem that we're having. I'm going to pull this shifter off here so you can see a little bit better what we got going on. It's actually going to be a lot easier to work on it without this in our way. Do yourself a favor. Lock tight this shifter lever on if you ride any sort of off-road or ADV bike, because these things will come off, and when you lose a shifter and you're out in the middle of nowhere, you've got problems. Ask me how I know. That's why I carry an extra one with a bolt and washer. Before we get to the problem, I want to show you how a starter works, because this is actually quite fascinating, and this is the same thing you're going to have in your car. Any engine that has a starter is going to essentially be the same thing. So this is what we call a bendix, right? So just to lay everything out, do you see this shaft right here? That's your starter motor. Your starter motor, when you push the start button or turn the key, it turns this. And that turns very fast. And when that turns, it activates this, what they call a bendix. And a bendix slings out and engages the flywheel and starts the engine. So when you engage that button, this thing slings out, these teeth move up and engage in here. Now this bendix right here runs on these factory bushings in the case. There's one right there, and there's one right here. Do you see how that goes in there? Now these, my starter started acting up when I was hitting the button. It was not engaging. And I looked into this and found out that these factory bushings are inferior and they don't last very long. And if left go, they can destroy the entire case. I'm hoping that's not the case already, but there is still a bushing in there. It doesn't look like it's hollowed out, but the only way to get that bushing out, because it's pressed into a case, is with that blind bearing puller. Now here's where the blind bearing puller is going to come in. We've got that factory bushing in there, and now that I check it, check the Bendix here, this should be a precision fit, but it's wiggling all over the place, meaning that it's worn that bushing out. Now these bushings are supposed to be pressed in there, so how do you possibly get that out of there, right? I mean, there's no lip on it to get a screwdriver in it, so that's where this comes in. So I've never used one before, so we're going to be learning together. But these are called collets, and if you look at them closely, they have, well, they're like segmented into 4 sections. How it works is you slip this into your bushing, and as you tighten this up, it spreads those little ends and grabs the bushing, and then you put this on the slide hammer and knock it out. Why these worn bushings like this are such a problem is that because of all that slop in there, it doesn't allow the Bendix to grab the teeth. And if we look at the Bendix on the ends of these teeth here, they're kind of knocked off because as that's been flying in there where it engages the flywheel, because it's allowed to wiggle and move around, that's starting to wear. And that's why I wasn't getting starter engagement, because everything's just getting loose and floppy. I don't know how bad the wear is on the Bendix or if we'll need to replace that, but we'll start with the bushings. By firming that up where it keeps this thing where it's supposed to be, this might not be a problem and we might not have to replace it. Now, when I read about this, I was told you need that blind bearing puller to get this out, but this, well, did it already come out? Well, yeah, look how loose it is. It was stuck on the shaft. So we're not going to need it at all. And that's a little bit of a problem because if that's augured out too much, then the new one won't seal. But I have a workaround for that, or won't stay in there. But I think the engine side, the case side, is in there hard. So let's take a look at that. Here we have the bushing on the engine case side, and this is the one that makes me nervous right here. If this one is bad, this can get augured out. This can actually crack the case. And my case, I don't even know if it's cracked. Let's clean the grease off here. I'm hoping not, because that's pretty, I don't even know how I would begin to repair that. But a good sign will be is if we can't get this out with a pick, if it's still pressed in there. What that means is that the bushing has worn, but the case has not got worn out or got augured out. And that seems to be in there very firm. So this is, I'm going to clean this out a little bit. This is going to be the perfect test bed for the blind bearing puller. We'll have to choose the right size of collet here, which I'm guessing is going to be the 8mm, unfortunately in metric. Dirty French. To expand this collet, we'll need 2 wrenches. There's a flat there and then a hex head, and then by tightening that down, that will expand that and press against the sides. All right, gentlemen, wish me luck here. I guess we'll back that off. Guess I can get it close. Don't know exactly how tight I need. I don't want to damage anything. Maybe just a little bit more. Now we can thread that carefully. Thread that slide hammer on there. And hopefully this will pop out. Well, that came out pretty easy. Let's clean this out and inspect the case. Man, it looks pristine. I don't see any wear. I think we caught it just in the absolute nick of time before that got any looser and started to wallow out that case. Goodness, that couldn't have worked any better. We got both, well, we got the one bushing out with this, the other one fell out, but here are the factory rolled steel bushings that are completely worn out. Now that I've shown you the problem, I'm going to show you the solution. We've got these 2 Super Skookum phosphor bronze bushings, replacement bushings, aftermarket, that are supposed to last forever, provided you keep them lubricated. Now, the one problem we have is, remember how that one just fell out and how loose it was? Well, we have a good product for that. This is Loctite 648. This is designed not to hold threads, but to secure bushings. Here you can see them up close. These factory ones look to be just steel, and these are, of course, bronze. and a little bit heavier duty. Here's another cool feature. The bronze bushings came with this installment tool, so we can press them in. Now, you can see the problem. I'm not worried about this side. If this were completely cracked and ruined, it wouldn't be that big a deal because it's not an expensive part to replace. But the engine side was my concern. But look how, see, those are not gonna, even those are not gonna stay in there. They have the same OD as the original ones. So this is where that Loctite is gonna come in. Here's a super cool attention to detail. Do you see the flat side there? It's got a groove in it. Now I'm told to put that up. That groove is put in there so that oil that may be dripping or splashing around in there could find its way in there and to continue to lubricate it. It's like a little channel. I think we're ready to install this. Make sure we put that channel up. I've not used this 648 before. I don't know exactly how much we need, but it's green in color. All right, that channel is up. Let's see, I put an arrow on up, so that's up right there. So basically like that. Oops. Now that'll take about 24 hours to set up, so you don't want to run your starter. That should be tapped out or seated. I assume you've heard Mama Kitty scolding me in the background. I couldn't figure out, like, why are you making so much noise? She was angry at me that I didn't put her chair by the wood stove. Sometimes I wonder who's the owner and who's the pet. Now, I read that if it's a press fit, if it's tight, you don't need the Loctite, but I don't see any harm in it. I don't want that. You don't want that thing in there spinning. You want to protect your case. You want that to be locked in there. Ooh, that green color is very satisfying. Okay, so the notch up, and I already cleaned this out. It's super clean, so make sure you don't have any grease in there. Now, this will have to be tapped in. Be very careful. Tap, tap, tap. Yeah, that's a really, I can feel that's a tight fit. Yeah, heard it seal there. Now we are ready to install this Bendix. Hopefully I don't have to replace this, but we'll start with this, and if I don't have any more problems, then we'll just go with it. It's going to be important about every 40 hours or so to get in here and just lubricate this a little bit, as well as the teeth. I'm going to use an Amsoil synthetic. I was told not to use a grease on here, but this is something you'll put on your maintenance schedule. I already lubricated this Bendix up pretty good, so it seems to be functioning just flawlessly. And this should go right in here. This should be a much better fit. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's much tighter. I could feel yeah, that's way better. This was all wiggly. Now, do you see how the teeth engage with the motor? And when that motor spools up, that throws this, and that meshes and lines up with the teeth on the flywheel, and that's how it starts. And then as soon as you disengage, this goes back and is clear, and then the engine now is running. Don't you love it when you drop a bolt and it doesn't hit the ground? Oh, it did hit the ground. So these are 2 pins, alignment pins here and here, so make sure that those are accounted for and not in your engine somewhere. Whenever you tighten anything down that has multiple bolts like this or a wheel, don't just crank down one side. Just kind of run everything up and then do kind of a crisscross pattern. That way you tighten it evenly. Now for our shifter bolt, use Loctite 243 for sure. All right, gentlemen, well, that wraps that up. I guess we all learned something today. I've seemed to have been able to make it up my whole life without needing a blind bearing puller, but when you need it, you need it. I bought one that was, I guess, would be in the mid-tier. I looked at the Snap-on version, and it was about $400, and I thought, I'm not paying that. It's something that I might never use again. But I hate to buy garbage on Amazon, so I went with Motion Pro. So it was like $175 or so. Will I ever use it again? I don't know, but if it saved the engine case on my bike and just being able to have the knowledge of how to do this in future things, like I didn't even know that was a thing. Like if you would have faced me with the problem of pulling a bushing out, a blind bushing like that, I really wouldn't have known what to do other than maybe try to cut it. So that was it was worth it for that, just for the knowledge. Also, a very special shout out to Tokyo Off-Road, who without his video on YouTube, I wouldn't been able to do this, and I really appreciate guys that take the time to explain to us in layman's terms how to do these things, because it's more important now than ever. With the economy and as expensive as things are, we gotta, we're not in a position where you can afford to pay everyone to do everything for you. So it's gonna be more so in the future, where we're going to have to figure out solutions to problems. We're going to have to solve our own problems and not just rely upon an expert. That has been a relatively new thing in civilization that wasn't the case back in the day. I know my granddad, growing up with the Depression era grandfather, he told me about self-reliance, about how they had to make do and how they always had to fix their own things and repair things, because there was no money in the budget to hire someone to come in and do it. You had to figure it out on your own. So that's why I share this type of content. Hopefully it will help you, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Take a moment to click the thumbs up if you haven't already. We really appreciate you watching, and may God bless you and your families. Please keep us in your prayers, and we'll see you all on the next video.